You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was at a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is.
Tonight, the True North strong. Canadians standing up to Trump. Good evening. Welcome to the show tonight, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to Rosa, who joined a little bit early and popped up in the chat. Thank you for joining us, Rosa, and hope you enjoy episode 20 of Night Talk from Montreal. Eddie?
From Montreal, you're Gary McDonald.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And
thank
my
you.
Name, I caught you off guard there. And from Playa del Carmen, Mexico, your fellow Canadian, Eddie Tkalik.
Never off to a great start. Duh. Yeah. All right. So a lot's happened just even since yesterday when we had the glitch, and late this afternoon I scrambled to get the latest ramblings from Trump in the Oval Office, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, because U.S. President Donald Trump has stepped up his talk of Canada becoming the 51st state, mentioning it not once but twice on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. First, as you saw on Air Force One while flying to the Super Bowl, and then later during a Fox News interview. Well, this afternoon, he outdid himself again as he outlined tariffs for everyone. Trump had more to say about Canada becoming the 51st state.
If you look at Canada and would be cherished as a 51st state, they don't pay their share of military in NATO. They pay very little for military. They're not protected at all. And the reason is they think we're going to protect them. The other thing is we subsidize them to the tune of about $200 billion a year. If we stop doing that, if we stop allowing them to make cars through tariffs and other things, cars, trucks, etc., what they make, they're not viable as a country.
Yeah, not viable as a country. How about that? Now, that was on Air Force One on Sunday as he was flying off to the Super Bowl.
Did you say Air Force One or Con Air One? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I got that right. Sorry, Gary.
Yeah. Well, you flip a coin. It depends on what day and who's on board. But good one, Eddie. Good one.
Yeah,
anyway.
Thank you.
So that was on the way to the Super Bowl. And then today in the Oval Office, this is what he came up.
Canada's been very bad to us on trade, but now Canada's going to have to start paying up. And Canada's been tough on the military because they have a very low military cost. They think we're going to, protect them with our military, which is unfair. So Canada's going to be a very interesting situation because we just don't need their product, and yet they survive off the fact that we do 95% of what they do. And Canada is just absolutely, I say it, and sometimes people smile and sometimes they say great idea, but Canada, their taxes would come down greatly, their security would go up greatly. Amazing things happen to Canada. And really, Canada, in this particular, why would we pay $200 billion a year in subsidies to Canada when they're not a state? You do that for a state, but you don't do that for somebody else's country. So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
There's another little clip from that White House session this afternoon we'll get to in a few minutes because it just really made my blood boil. Speaking of the Prime Minister, he's been in Europe hoping to drum up support for opening up more trade opportunities. Earlier yesterday in Brussels, he had this response to Trump's music.
Let's be very clear. Conversations around a 51st state are a non-starter. It's never going to happen. But we have to take seriously what the president is saying and fold that into our thinking as we continue to stand up for Canada.
And he repeated at one point, I believe, during that news conference, once again, hell no, we're not becoming 51. But Trump just keeps harping and harping and harping about the subsidization. Let me throw this out for consideration. I looked for the definition of subsidization, and that is the act of providing financial assistance or support, usually by a government or organization, to help reduce costs or encourage specific activities. This can take the form of direct payments, tax breaks, grants, or other forms of financial aid. Subsidization is commonly used in industries such as agriculture, education, healthcare, and energy to promote economic stability, innovation, or social welfare. Well, when we are paying for goods and services that we are bringing in, and we've sought to bring in, that is not what I term subsidization. Now, I could be wrong because, like getting into language and literature and English, that was not my strongest suit. As a matter of fact, I didn't have a lot of strong suits at school, but I had a lot of fun. Anyhow, but that, he keeps using the word subsidization, and maybe some of his base is buying into this, but I think even the base is slowly starting to wake up as to the cost and the pain that they're going to be experiencing as a result of tariffs and the other things that he's doing, cutting off, and Elon, the U.S. unelected president, going through and chopping programs here and there. And today we hear about South Africa because the USAID office is under complete renovation by Elon, and all of the grants are cut off. Mm-hmm. Apparently that included some grants to South Africa, and they are, I forget what the term was with U.S., but they're suspending U.S. businesses, and they're also cutting off all shipments of rich minerals to the United States. Yeah. So that's one of the first, and I believe the president of South Africa was saying today that they are the first African country to stand up. They're tired of being disrespected in ways like this. They're the first country to stand up and just say enough is enough. They drew their line in the sand, and he crossed it, and now it's game over for the U.S. and Donald. And what's really interesting, it's something I forgot about when I was discussing it with Deborah earlier. She said, isn't that interesting? Elon cutting off money to South Africa. He is South African, is he not?
Yeah. Absolutely. But you know what? When you look at the likes of, I'll comment on that and I'll cycle back to a few of the points that you made earlier about Mr. Trump's speeches and whatnot. When you look at guys like Elon Musk and Trump and the big guys when it comes to United States economy and richness, the richest guys in the States, these guys, I don't think these individuals look at where they were born, where they're from. They don't care what planet they're from. All they're after, and a lot of people will agree to this, is just placating their own egos, placating each other's egos, and money. What is in it for me? I don't think Mr. Musk has any sort of allegiances to his birthright and his birthplace. That's just the way it is, Gary. I mean, for him to criticize or make comments or support sanctions against his own country where he came from, I think, first of all, is a little shameful. But at the end of the day, you look at these individuals and they're all about money. We have our own people like this in Canada as well. Kevin O'Leary, I believe his name is. This guy's Mr. Money. He'd sell out all of us if he can make a buck. So
Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah, Mr. Wonderful. That's what we're dealing with here. So that's my point there. The other one right at the beginning where he had mentioned, I think he used the word Canada is not a viable country.
Yes.
How dare he? Okay. This is coming from the smartest businessman that ever existed in the United States of America. What is it? He bankrupted 4 companies.
I was just going to say, time
First
out,
of all,
smartest
yeah,
businessman.
smartest businessman knows everything about a country's viability. He doesn't even know his own business's viabilities. Okay,
Wasn't
he
one of
had
them a
tri- he-
casino?
yeah.
Yeah.
Where on planet Earth has a casino ever closed down because they weren't making money?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, his credibility with sensible people is out the window. His base is going to say, that's just liberal propaganda. None of that is true. Yada 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 yada, and they'll just look at their own internal sources for information, like Fox News, for example. Pretty accurate, very honest, up to date opinion network. I mean, they're always honest and they're always truthful and they're always accurate and they're always educating their bases, right? That doesn't happen. I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, you are no business genius to criticize a sovereign country's capability of being a country, both from an identity perspective, culturally, or even from a business perspective, right? And he also had mentioned, Canada would make a good fit as a 51st state, and I think he mentioned some sort of benefits that Canada is going to get as a result of becoming a 51st state, and being taken care of and looked after by the United States. Does Puerto Rico ring a bell in terms of what the hell happened to them during his last tenure? He flicked his nose at these poor people. They had no running water. They were devastated by, I don't remember which hurricane, just completely devastated. Their entire power grid was completely massacred. And what did he do? Then he throw a paper towel to somebody and said, here you go. So don't tell me that you think that Canada is going to be better off under the wing of the United States of America, especially under Donald Trump. You know what? Thank you, Mr. Trump, for getting us Canadians pissed, rallying us around this behind me right here, the Canadian flag, the Canadian identity, and the Canadian culture. So far, besides his base, I don't think he's impressed upon anybody in the United States that is sensible, or around the world that are sensible, that he knows what he's talking about. So he does not come across as any sort of a democratically elected leader of any country in this world, let alone the United States. So what can I say, Gary? I'm really emotional about this, and as far as I'm concerned, you're sitting in front of me having a coffee right now, and I'm pissed.
And we do have some comments coming in, so let's go. Rosa says, Trump, he has the typical characteristics of a narcissist. There are no boundaries, and in power, he causes pain. He uses the shock factor to stir things up, and it's working. Thank you for that comment, Rosa, and you're bang on. I totally agree with you on that for sure. All right, and then we have from Greg Zed. Can either of you brilliant men ever figure out why it has taken a threat of tariffs to get everyone on board for such things as the reduction in cross-interprovincial trade, spending $1.3 billion on border security, and so on? That is, Ontario buys millions in lumber from the USA when we have an abundance of lumber in Atlantic Canada. That said, and why all of a sudden are we looking twice to buy local and made in Canada? There truly has to be more than what meets the eye sees.
I guess he's talking about you, brilliant man. So go ahead and answer this one.
Oh, thank you. Anyhow, certainly we are at a turning point in this country as far as we are realizing, and I hope the 8-second attention span does not apply in this case, that in fact we do start moving forward very quickly to bring down the artificial trade barriers between provinces. Why should we, in a country of this size and of the richness of this country, why should we have barriers between provinces as far as goods moving back and forth? Why, it just does not make any sense. And some of the regulations involved in these trade barriers between provinces, just like right down to the size of tires on trucks. Like it's just, It's totally unbelievable. Now, You may recall in the first term when he imposed the tariffs on steel and aluminum, there was some talk about it then. But once they reached an agreement and the tariffs were lifted, the whole thing dried up. It just evaporated, and no further action was taken. I think this time around we need to declare a national state of emergency related to trade, and let's get together and bring together some of the same people that they brought together as part of Team Canada, and let's get working on this. And let's have key performance indicators as well, so that you've got a date. This has to be ready to go for Parliament's approval by, I don't know, like say December 15th this year.
Right.
That takes you right into, the final days of sitting, usually the fall sitting of the House. Get it in so that it can be passed, and everything is in place in the background. So come January 1st, 2026, boom, it's free trade across the country.
Yeah. Well, Gary, I mean, look at this right now. You have all the heads of our provinces and territories in Canada. They've been working together since day one of the threat of these tariffs. And you know what? They're effectively acting nice. They're playing nice. They're not representing their xenophobic agendas for their own provinces. They're thinking Canada, okay? Right now, the momentum is there. They're addressing the immediate issue of Donald Trump and his threats, both from a tariff perspective and both in terms of this whole turn Canada into a 51st state. I am sure I would be very surprised if all these leaders have not looked at each other and say to each other, you know what, let's play nice. I think we should be open borders right across the country from coast to coast on commerce. To start with, the commerce one is an easiest one to tackle, and that's what we're all going to be dependent on to be able to move us to this next stage post United States dependency. Just keep the momentum going. I mean, if I know they have the business of running their provinces. They've got top-notch ministers. Assign them a full-time minister. Their job is to deal with this as part of a major project initiative and get it done, like you were saying, to be ready by the 1st of December or the first day of January in the new year. I think it's going to be a great thing for the country. You know what? Is it going to be perfect? No. How bad is it right now? Pretty bad. So anything they do is an improvement. And they got to keep this momentum going now, whether it's going to be the newly elected Liberal leader, interim prime minister, or the new prime minister, regardless of which individual or party is going to take us into the next 4 years here in Canada. Keep the same people in charge. Keep them in those posts and make sure the project gets done and not kiboshed because the government changed hands.
Well, that's why you have key deputy ministers within government, the civil servants that don't change. And there are some very capable people in those positions across the country and at the federal level as well that can bring this together. But we need all representatives from all aspects of business involved in this too, to make sure that we get it right the first time. Or at least the foundation of it right the first time. Yes, it'll take some tweaking and finessing once it's in place, but at least we have a solid foundation and we do have trade going back and forth. And I'll take it a step farther. We should also declare a national energy emergency. The federal government takes over control of pushing through pipelines where required, including getting Alberta oil to Tidewater on the East Coast, and that will step on toes here in Quebec because Quebec was against Energy East for social reasons. It will include the First Nations. We have to go through, and it'll rankle the environmentalists, but the fact of the matter is we're not going to turn off the use of fossil fuels overnight. It's not going to happen. There are too many things that have to fall in place. way too many things. It's taken us a number of years to get to the point with the plastics. And start looking at everything in your house, and you'll see some kind of a derivative of a fossil fuel worked into whatever it is that you're looking at, whether it's your furniture, some of your shampoos and things. It's all there. You don't turn that tap off overnight. So we have to live with it. Let's make it the best we can, and let's make some money, because we have tankers coming from places like the Mideast and Venezuela, great trading partners, right? Wow, you can really count on them. And Greg lives in the St. John area, and he could vouch for this. You look out into the bay, and you have 4, 5, 6 fully loaded super tankers loaded with crude waiting to get into the buoy to offload for the Irving refinery, which, by the way, is the largest refinery in Canada. And about 90% of the product refined goes to the hungry Northeast U.S. But that money, that when Irving Oil buys that crude, that money's all going offshore.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we be buying within Canada and using the product that we have here that's available? And I think we need to just say, okay, you know what, let's take the blinders off. Yeah, there are different areas we can work on to keep improving the environment. But in the meantime, we need to really secure our source of supply. Plus also open up offshore trading opportunities. They've got one pipeline to Tidewater on the West Coast now. We should have one pipeline at least on the East Coast to Tidewater as well. And St. John has all of the facilities in place.
Yeah, and I think Premier Legault seems to be softening up on that position of not allowing Quebec territory to house a major pipeline like that. And you know what? At the end of the day, in terms of the rights of our original habitants of Canada, going through their land, going through the reserves and whatnot. They have a lot at stake here as well. This is the United States of America we're talking about here. We need to do something completely different to be able to wean ourselves away from the dependency of that country. If indeed things turn south and we cannot sustain our own economy the way we see fit, I tell you what, the rights of a lot of our glorious people here in Canada, I don't care what land and what rights you have to territory in the country, that is going to disappear under the United States of America. So it behooves them to work with the provincial government in allowing some of these pipelines to traverse their land, to go across their land. Otherwise, we're all going to be in a whole 10 feet, 15 feet of water. It's just not a sustainable thing. So I'm really happy Mr. Legault is open to the conversations. I know there's going to be a lot from the environmentalists, but you know what, Mr. Environmentalist, Mrs. Environmentalist, whatever the case is, we need to think differently and out of the box right now, because these are very desperate times. These are very dangerous times. So you know what? Unfortunately, we're going to have to step on a few feet and make sure that we can progress as a country and prove Mr. Trump wrong, that we are indeed very viable. And
not to be
barriers off.
Not to be an alarmist, but you have to remember we are under attack, and he made no bones about it on more than one occasion that he's going to try and take us out with economic force. So we are under attack. Trying to catch up here on the comments as well. Nancy says Canada has to open the borders between provinces first and foremost. And then let's see now. We have a couple more here. Trying to catch up. Deborah says benefits to becoming 51st state: illiteracy, infant deaths, prison, racism, homophobia. Shall I go on? Wow, there's some food for thought.
Yeah.
And let's go back. Nancy says this situation is critical. Provinces need to open trade immediately between borders, not next December.
You know what? That's not a bad idea. Shoot first and let's ask questions later and figure it out, right? Not a bad idea.
Exactly. And Greg, Great answer, and that is why I knew you brilliant men could figure it out. What I hear you saying is we need a political appetite for this and vision. Absolutely vision. Definitely vision.
You rock, you brilliant man, Gary. Nice job.
Now, let's get back to the subsidization issue, because this is a bit like a candle with a flame burning my butt. Goods and services for 2024. And this reflects the first 3 quarters of 2024. They're still finalizing the figures for the last quarter. Oh, get my keyboard out of the way. So, in the first 3 quarters, the combined value of goods and services traded between Canada and the U.S. was approximately Canadian $910 billion. That translates to $683 billion U.S. Exports to the U.S., Canada's exports to the United States were valued at nearly U.S. $350 billion during this period. And energy exports, crude oil, in 2024, energy accounted for 29% of Canada's goods exports to the U.S. In July and September of 2024, Canada exported over 4.3 million barrels of oil per day to the United States, marking a substantial increase from previous years. In 2023, Canada's exports to the United States encompass goods, services, and energy, reflecting a deeply integrated economic relationship. The total value of those, $482 billion in 2023 US dollars.
Wow.
Yeah. So, goods we import. Canada imported approximately $33.3 billion worth of goods, and that's Canadian, from the United States in October 2024 alone. Over the entire year, total goods imported rose by 1.9% compared to 2023, driven primarily by consumer goods and agricultural products. And we also, where is it here? There was another figure and I can't find it now. Goods imported. Total value imported, approximately $277 billion worth of goods from the United States in 2023. 277 billion US worth of goods that we imported from the United States in 2023. Sure, the numbers are smaller coming in than what we're putting out. Why? Well, it doesn't take a mental giant to figure it out. You have a population of 300 and some odd million in the US, and a population in Canada of 41 million. So you have a very small market in Canada versus the large market in the US. So yeah, the demand is going to be much higher going across the border. What does he even think before he opens that mouth?
We talked about this a bit yesterday, Gary. He knows exactly.
Yeah, but nobody knows we did.
No, now I know that. Well, I talk all the time. You know what? He knows exactly what he's doing, but this is not the information that his communications team or his public relations teams are going to put out there, because they don't want to rock the boat with their constituents. They want to rock the boat with their supporters, with the Trumplicans. They don't want to know the truth, right? So give them lies because they eat this all up, right? It's all about the delivery. It's all about the pizzazz. It's all about the style. It doesn't matter whether it's truthful or not, and those numbers make perfect sense. I mean, he's talking about, a trade deficit with Canada. We're a fraction of their population. Of course, there's going to be a trade deficit because there's a larger demand. But the interesting statistic that we talked about before, if you take oil products and byproducts out of the equation, oil and gas, anything related to fuel, take that out of the equation and he gets it pretty cheap, okay? Take the power coming out of Ontario and Quebec, take that off the table. Well, you know what? We actually buy more from them than they buy from us. But that's never going to be on the tables in any reputable media outlet like Fox News, right? You're never going to find it out there. And it's all about the control. It's all about manipulating the insanity of the masses. And, after a 50% vote for President Trump, there's a lot of insanity of the masses out there to control. So they've got to continue to do that. I also like to comment on some of your production and sales into the United States. Being in Mexico, of course, I'm looking at the media here from time to time, and President Sheinbaum, she's getting ready. I mean, she's one smart lady, very tough lady, and I don't think she's going to take any crap from Donald Trump. She's going to let him win, let him think he won, and all in the meantime, she's actually creating herself a program here, a vision, as Greg put out. Just to give you an idea, Mexico will soon stop exporting oil when their Tabasco refinery is at full capacity, which is under construction. And they're talking about a few months from now, it's going to be at full production. They do presently refine oil here, but it's in very antiquated facilities. This Tabasco refinery is supposed to be state-of-the-art. Just to give you an idea of what's going to happen here, their plan is when it's operating at maximum capacity, all the oil will not be exported, according to what she's saying. It's going to be for complete internal consumption. And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, okay? Crude oil exports right now from Mexico to the United States is at 63%. So they send out 63% of their crude oil into the United States for them to do what they will. They also export 93% of the refined petroleum here in Mexico to the United States. And then what does the United States do? All that crude oil that they've been sending them and the Americans have been refining, all of the refined petroleum that's being sent to the United States, they're selling it back to the Mexicans. And the Mexicans right now import 90%, Gary, 90% of their refined oil. And Sheinbaum basically said, enough is enough. I don't care what my predecessors did. This is our vision moving forward. We are going to be self-sustainable for petroleum requirements in Mexico. By next year, you know what? She accomplishes this. She's got some big beep. I'm telling you, this it was so amazing to actually see this. I saw this in the newspaper. I checked out a video clip, and she's very statesmanlike, to tell you the truth. She portrays an air of confidence and an air of strength, and I think that's what a lot of countries need right now in terms of actually seeing and hearing a vision from their leaders. I think something we've been lacking here in Canada until recently, but no, she's moving ahead with her own plans.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. As Canadians, we have to remember to do what we can as well to support Mexico.
Yes,
They're our partners in this as well, because he's swinging the hammer both ways on both sides.
Yeah,
just unbelievable. Now, speaking of us being kind of in a leadership vacuum here, the level of disrespect, I have to say, that Trump is showing to Canada,
mm-hmm.
and our Prime Minister is really growing. It's just unbelievable, and it may have hit a new low today in the Oval Office when he was signing off the executive order that's going to put tariffs on every country, and it looks like it's going to come into effect on April 1st. But anyway, I want to play a clip for you, and it's a very short clip, and tell me if you hear something, because I did enhance the audio in one part, and
okay.
I was just in disbelief.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens.
Did you hear it?
Were those people laughing in the background?
Yeah. One more time.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens.
That is, to me, the lowest of lowest. It's disrespectful to our country. It's disrespectful to us as Canadians. It's disrespectful to the office of Prime Minister. Look, I am no Trudeau supporter by any stretch of the imagination, haven't been from the get-go. I have praised him, like especially 2 weeks ago on Saturday night when he came out and the speech that he gave. You know, the speechwriter, as I said 2 weeks ago, and his delivery, phenomenal, bang on, very statesmanlike, exactly what should have been done at that stage for the country, and presented to the country in that manner. And even though I may disagree with Justin Trudeau and a lot of his policies and you know the way he thinks about things, I still respect him, first of all, for offering for public office, because despite everything else, it's not an easy task if you are elected, number one. But number two, and more importantly, he is the Prime Minister, and I respect the office of Prime Minister, regardless of who is in the chair.
Correct.
Could be the worst person in the world, but they're still the Prime Minister and the leader of the country, and I have respect for the office. And that kind of crap that we have witnessed in the Oval Office today, and you know, with media there, and the way that Trump has been handling this elsewhere, just slapping around Governor Trudeau and Trudeau, as he says, and it's just like, are we in a schoolyard with 6-year-olds? Like 6-year-olds are much more mature than that.
We are. I mean, okay, first of all, we all know about Mr. Trump's integrity level, which is almost zero, okay? Look at the people that he surrounded himself with, mostly non-elected officials, okay? Some of these individuals don't have the right to conduct traffic between cross streets in the center of New York. These guys are buffoons. They have zero respect for their neighbor, zero respect for themselves. Why would they have any respect for any law-abiding country? And you know that's clearly demonstrated in terms of what his entire cabinet and his entire support base and the courts are allowing him to do. He does as he wills, and no one is going to get in his way. Okay, no one is going to criticize him, especially in his own backyard, about what he is not doing well or criticizing any of his policies, because that's pretty much a death sentence in terms of political career. So look at the individuals that are there. The Secretary of Defense, I believe it is. Okay, great. He was in the military, and I really respect all military, all walks of life from every country in the world. But this guy was a Fox anchorman. Now, this is what's leading the defense forces of the United States of America. You don't think a guy like that sitting on the Oval Office couch is going to laugh at Trudeau and what he says? What about Kennedy? If Kennedy was sitting there, that could have been him laughing just as easily.
He was just confirmed today, by the way.
Oh, there you go. More idiocy in terms of confirming people that should not be in the positions they're in right now. So why would we expect these people, these clowns, not to laugh? I mean, just total, absolute disrespect for this back here. And you know what? If the United States of America and Trump can disrespect a proud, respectable country in the world like Canada, what do the other countries in Europe think is going to happen when he turns his attention to them? There's going to be zero respect. I think quite a few episodes ago, I kind of reviewed an incident where during Trump's first term, the first time he met the president of France, I mean, he's a lot shorter than Mr. Trump, and he puts his arm around him like a little kid, and then he sweeps his shoulder like he's sweeping dandruff off of him in front of cameras, in front of the world media. What kind of disrespect is that, let alone the leader of what's supposed to be the free world, disrespecting the leader of a respectable country like France? It's just going to get worse. I mean, this whole thing with South Africa, wait until the rhetoric starts with that. If not racist remarks, I would not put that past them. But But Gary, you know what? You had warned me about this clip, and man, I'm freaking pissed off seeing that right now. What a kick in the chones that was. That was so disrespectful. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Just before we have some more comments to catch up on, but just before we get to that, and I just lost my train of thought. Let's go to the comments.
Sorry about that.
Oh, jeez. And I'm sure it was just a great comment too. But anyway, Greg says, and Deborah, don't forget their outstanding health care. That was in response to Deborah's comment where she outlined all of the so-called advantages. Okay, what's Joe say? Joe says, after years of being told that our greatest threat was from communist regimes like China, Russia, North Korea, and so on, it's shocking to realize our greatest threat is from our southern neighbors.
Yeah.
And of course, and he has one more, and the orange dictator, Trump. Rosa comes in with Governor Trudeau.
Yeah.
That's
I
the way
think
it's been going.
Yeah.
And one more here. Why does he get away with this? He's a loose cannon. Yeah, you're being very kind, Rosa.
Yeah.
You're being very kind. All right, let's move along because there is one other little twist to this whole thing about Canada becoming the 51st state. And that is this story, this part of it, that was outlined by MSNBC's Ali Velshi.
Mm-hmm.
Canada has 41 million people. They live in 10 provinces, which are like states, and 3 territories, which are like territories. So if Canada were to become America, some changes would be in order. First of all, Congress would have to grow. That would mean Canada, as part of the new America, would net at least 54 seats in the House of Representatives. For context, the 20 states with the smallest populations have just 46 House seats between all of them. But here's problem number one. This little thing called the Reapportionment Act of 1929 mandates that the U.S. House is no bigger than 435 members. So if you did the math, combining Canada's population with America's and dividing it by 435, Canada would net 47 seats, and those seats would be taken away from states all over the country. Who's going to tell all of those voters that Trump gave their congressional representation to a guy in Saskatchewan?
I love that.
Well, that was great.
That really was a good one.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
It's very simple. I mean, right now, Mr. Trump has been running above the law for, let's say, the last year. He's going to continue running above the law. He's going to continue rewriting the law. In this act of 1929, he's just going to brush it off and say, you know what? That's an old law that no longer applies to the real world anymore. And let me change the electoral seats and representation in the Great House in the United States and add some more, like printing more American dollars. It's going to be that easy for him. So he's just going to change things to make sure he's appeasing his base, because most of the real estate that the reporter was speaking about was in Trump's base. So he's going to make sure they're going to get more constituency and more representation. They want to beat Saskatchewan, of course, right? Oh man!
The thing with Trump is right now, a number of his executive orders have been challenged in court as being outside of the realm of the law related to the power of the president with executive orders. So he's just plowing through, doesn't give a damn. It's shoot first and ask questions later is the way he's approaching it. And also, it didn't seem to get a whole lot of play, but there was a Republican who introduced a bill the other day, and it was designed to change the way they describe the term limits for presidents.
No.
Yeah, and I where it's going. It's going with to give him at least another 4 years, but he's going to be 82 by the end of this term. And but then again, a dictator usually it's a lifelong position until the lights go out permanently and they end up 6 feet under. So, and if you recall a couple of times in the campaign, early in the campaign, and other times before the election period really ramped up, Trump referred to this may be the last election you have to vote in.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. In the same way as he very, quietly, well, not quietly, but just very nonchalantly let the whole thing about Canada becoming the 51st state roll over his lips one day. Just threw it out there, and it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Let's see if it sticks. And he's been relentless ever since.
Well, regarding his age, I mean, you and I both noticed during the year with campaign, during the year of campaign, I mean, which is always arduous on the most healthiest of people. You and I both noticed how frail he started to look, how tired he started to look, and increasingly incoherent. Couldn't get a sentence off properly if his life depended on him. He had the vocabulary of a sixth grader. Even that was a stretch. So even with that, he got more than 50% of the vote in the United States. Americans knowing and seeing this individual, that's just Donald Trump and this and that. Do you really think at the end of his 4 years here, and if he is able to swing an extension of his mandate as president of the United States and he ran for election again, do you think people are really going to be concerned about how he looks, what he says, how he says it? I doubt very much. So
but if they're not, they should be.
Yes, they should. They should have been looking at it this last election.
Exactly.
not us hoping for the next one. So his base is going to vote for him no matter what. And we've seen all the video clips galore about questions, very simple questions posed to his base, and they can't even get an answer off in the same level of vocabulary and intelligence that Emperor Trump responds back with. It's just uncanny. So I really don't think, if he can swing it, that he can extend the allowance for a presidential term, he'll be in it come hell or high water. And you know what? There's a good chance he's going to win it again. A lot of funny people out in the United States,
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry. If I was there, I'd give you a hug because I know that was bad news you'd want to hear.
No, not a hug. A shot of scotch would do very nicely. Yeah, you notice that I've pushed the bourbon out of the way altogether.
Good
Which,
man.
by the way, here this I found interesting. The other day, I received an offer from the SAQ because I had the membership, and they were offering an extra 3,000 points on a particular bottle of wine, American wine, and it was American. And then yesterday I received an offer from them, and it looks like it's a new bourbon that they're bringing in from the U.S. It's around $74 a bottle, and I can't remember the name of it. But they're offering 12,000 points with the purchase of a bottle. Like that's $12 in conversion. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, are we going to see more of this? And when I was in the other day, they still had like a few bottles in our store here on Peel.
On Peel, yeah.
They still had a few bottles of bourbon. But really what was hanging around some of the more expensive bottles, so like the $69 and $75 bottles, but not a whole lot. And because I'm watching that now just to see what's going on, and the Scotch was picked over for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in that regard. But as we discussed last week, speaking of that, Canadians are uniting against any talk of annexation by Trump, and over the last 7 to 8 days, that resolve has been growing stronger as federal, provincial, and business representatives continue to lobby Washington officials to ease trade tensions. Now, I'll say one thing. about that. We had the 13 premiers down in Washington yesterday,
Right.
and they actually did get an audience at the White House, not with President Trump, and not with the level 1 tier officials. They ended up with level 2 tier officials, but they did get a meeting that was supposed to be 30 minutes, and it lasted almost an hour. It took Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Fury and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe almost an hour just to get their security clearance to get in.
Right.
Anyway, they got in and they had what they said, a good discussion. They didn't seem overly optimistic coming out of it. And again, it was with level 2 tier officials. But when you get up to, like, even the Commerce Secretary has not been confirmed yet, or hadn't been as of yesterday or the day before. So what's even the point? Well, we know he's going to be confirmed. They have enough votes to carry it. But, I think it's time to stop with that kind of diplomacy, because it's like beating your head against a brick wall. After a while, you realize that, this does hurt. I think that energy now should be focused on working on the interprovincial trade barriers here, and as well, the Prime Minister was in Europe this week and meeting with EU officials. He's opened the door. Let's get people over there, and let's get some people to Japan and start shoring up those opportunities as well, and just take our focus off Washington for a while, because the return on investment is not there, and it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
I think after today or after tomorrow, if there's a few people left down there, on the lobby effort, I think cut it off. Get back, reassemble, take a week to plot out the new strategy, and then send the teams out to Europe and Japan, and look elsewhere, and let's get things rolling that way. Oh yeah, and get working on the interprovincial trade barriers and to get rid of them. Now, Eddie, as part of what the research we were doing for this show, and to see exactly what Canadians are doing and how they're doing it, you came across a really good op-ed piece
Yeah, I did.
the other day, and I'll let you have a go with it.
Okay.
and explain exactly what you were doing. Just give me a second. I'll just
Sure.
switch that camera, because it's you, not me. Where'd you go? There you go.
There we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading the Gazette a few days ago, Gary, and I came across this wonderful article in the opinion editorials. And I caught an article that was written by a Pete McMartin. He writes columns regularly in the Vancouver Sun, and I just want to apologize to our viewers. I'm just going to be going back and forth to the article so I can actually express what I saw. So I saw this wonderful article, and what was it all about? To summarize it, it's basically almost poetic to a degree, where Pete is expressing himself as a Canadian citizen about some of the sorrows he's experiencing personally as a human being, as a Canadian, based on what's going on in the United States right now, what they're threatening Canada with, and how he feels about it. And I read this, and thanks, Gary, for putting some of the paragraphs up. It was really, really, really touching. So for the viewers that are listening to this and picking up the podcast later on in time, the columnist is Peter McMartin. He writes columns regularly for the Vancouver Sun, and you can also catch this in Montreal Gazette's February 11th edition. Absolutely, heart-wrenching, and you can feel the emotion of the message. That I'm just so emotional. I was so emotional reading it to myself. I teared up, And some of the things that I was reading to my wife and expressing to her, she was also very emotional about it too. And you know what? A significant level of patriotism just went right through my body reading this, and it resonates so highly with me. So if you guys will permit me a few minutes, I'm going to go through this with you. And very simple. The title is Buy America. It feels like I don't know you anymore. Goodbye, America. It's been nice knowing you. Now, those two lines are so powerful because this is exactly what my wife and I have been discussing ad nauseum for the last 2 weeks. It's basically goodbye, America. And, goodbye, America, in terms of for at least the next 4 years, we're not going to be spending in the United States. Along with a lot of other people, and we'll talk about this later, Gary, we're buying Canadian. I will not travel on American carriers, whether it's an airplane or a cruise line. As a citizen of Canada, I just can't bring myself to do that any longer. So just to carry on, the next one is very touching. Goodbye to anyone on both sides of the border, both in Canada and the United States, of course, who bends the knee to Donald Trump, rather than standing up to him as any self-respecting person would and should. I think every one of us that's been exposed to Mr. Trump and some of the people that we've grown up with in some cases, some people that we've become friends with of recent, there's a lot of individuals out there that you're surprised about their allegiance to Donald Trump, even though they're on Canadian soil and they've been in Canada for a very long time. Some even born here are genuflecting to Donald Trump. So you know what? Some individuals are saying goodbye. Most painful of all, okay, and this is true, goodbye to my American friends, some of whom I have known all my life, and some of whom I've collected along the way. I can cross your border, but no longer wish to. Your narcissist in chief has decreed that my countrymen and I have the choice of becoming destitute, vassals, or enemies. I'm choosing the latter. So, here we are, the beautiful country and that wonderful relationship, business relationship we've had with the United States for 170 plus years, all of a sudden calling us destitute, calling us names, calling us vassals. You know what? At this particular point in time, yeah, I'm your enemy. I want to have nothing to do with you guys anymore. I mean, MAGA, make America go away? I don't know. It just resonated with me so much just reading this, and there were a lot of paragraphs in between that, but you guys kind of get the gist. Next paragraph, which caught my attention, is I look across the border now, and I see a violent, burgeoning autocracy, now ever on the edge of civil war, and a population that is either cheering on this brutalism or quaking in fear from it. I know a lot of people in the United States, Gary, from my travels when I used to work with CETA. I know a lot of people in Canada. A lot of people are expressing fear. Some of the folks that are retired, we're kind of afraid of what's going to happen to the economy, especially where a lot of our savings are invested for our retirement. What's going to happen? A lot of people are quaking in fear, both here in Canada and in the United States. The American government has shown that the established alliances mean nothing to it now, and so cannot be trusted. It trumps New World Order. All the old verities are off the table, so let us make new ones. So he's torn up NAFTA. I think this one is called CUSCA or something like that, the American, Mexican, Canadian deal. He's throwing that out the window. He has absolutely zero regard for anything that's on paper or respect for treaties or anything like that. So you know what? Let's make our own, right? Why not? Let's make our own. I'm all for that. The next one is great. There are a lot of people in the United States that are completely ignorant of what's going on and what Mr. Trump is implying or what he's trying to impose on Canada and what he eventually is going to impose on other countries. And I quote, "Conduct the mother of all public relations campaigns and let Americans know how badly they are perceived in the world, that they've gone from the shining city on the hill to just another empire with the same tired territorial ambitions of Russia or China. Do anything to impress upon Americans that their government is without real friends or allies and that they, in essence, are alone. Yes, there are other countries in the world. Yes, when you watch the Olympics, it's only not the United States of America that's actually showing on television. There are a lot of countries out there, a lot of beautiful and wonderful countries that won't pound their chest and say we're the greatest country in the world. We are a great country to live in Canada. We are a wonderful country. And we are pretty modest about it. Most other countries are very modest about it too. So, you know what? Yeah, a mother of all campaigns, advertisement campaigns, whatever, communications campaigns into the United States by advertising time during the Super Bowl or whatever, and let the American people know what and who we are up here in Canada. A lot don't know, so they don't really understand the ramifications of what's going on in the United States towards Canada right at this time. So that just kind of really hit the heart, Gary. And I think you and I talked about it too, and I think we both experienced it. That yes, you know what? I have a handful of friends in the United States that I had no understanding and no realization that they were hardcore Republicans. Very, very difficult for me to have a conversation with someone that supports what I would call a country that's headed towards tyranny. I just can't do it. And you know what? Up here in Canada as well, I know of a few people, some close friends that, come hell or high water, they'll bring God into the picture and God bless Trump and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm just completely flabbergasted. Oh my God, my friend is an absolute Trumplican. And based on what's been happening recently, I'm not talking about his first 4 years. I'm just talking about his first 4 weeks. Everything that's been going on in the first 4 weeks, and then you have people that you've been friends with just completely and arbitrarily support this person. I don't know, Gary. I'm going to have a very hard time sitting down and having a scotch with people like that. It's just so hard. I have a relative, as a matter of fact, twins, right? One living here in Canada and one moved down to Atlanta. They don't talk to each other anymore. The one that's living in Atlanta is an absolute 100% Trumplican. And when asked very simple questions why, you never get an answer. That's typical for the Trump base. So, Gary, I'm very emotional about this. I'm really saddened about this. My wife, Manel, is very saddened by this as well. But you know what? At some point, you got to cut off the cancer. And it's for our own mental well-being at a certain point. And you know what? You got to do it. You got to do it for what's best for yourself. And, unfortunately, and we haven't decided yet, we just might have to cut ties with all these individuals until things settle down or views change. That's why this particular article resonated with me, and I would really encourage everyone to read that and try to identify themselves on how they feel vis-a-vis this particular article. So, Gary, thank you very much for allowing me the time to speak my mind about this one.
Well, thinking of him, and you mentioned earlier about the New Deal, which when it was negotiated during his first term, and he said, with Canada and Mexico, this is a great deal. It's the greatest deal ever. And then he breaks it by threatening the tariffs.
Yeah.
So he can't be trusted. He set a precedent to, in front of every country around the world. He can't be trusted. He won't honor contracts. And he'll just, roughshod through. So we have some more comments to catch up on, too. Joe says his base is a cult, and they believe everything he says is gospel. And, it really does appear that way. It really, really does. And then Galamir, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I must apologize to my Canadian neighbors. I didn't vote for the moron. He is burning bridges all over the place, and please don't block the maple syrup I get from Canada.
Oh, you know what? We're going to have...
But when you think about it, there were a lot of people last week on social media, a lot of Americans on social media apologizing
Yes.
and feeling very badly with how we were being treated. And, there's hope, but right now, like, he's just running roughshod all over the place. And I have yet to try Horton's coffee. Well, Galmier, it's not really a Canadian tradition anymore. It's just by name only. It's owned by a Brazilian venture capital group of some sort, I believe it is.
Which is funneled through the United States, I believe.
Yeah, it's a what's it called? Restaurants Brands International or something like that. They also own Wendy's and some other brands as well.
And just Galmier, thank you very much for your comment. Look, if we end up turning off the maple syrup taps down to the United States, tell you what, after the show, just give us your address, and Gary and I will smuggle some down to you somehow. All right? Thank you very much for your comment.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Nancy, I agree, Gary, we need to actively search opportunities in Europe, Japan, Africa, South America. The team down south are afraid of the new Hitler and are only giving lip service to visiting Canadian dignitaries. That's how I feel, that we are just getting lip service, Nancy. And they may be shaking hands and smiling, but even the first dinner when Dominique LeBlanc and Prime Minister Trudeau went down that Friday night, and it was looked upon as kissing the ring, and it was, Trump was using the Prime Minister as a prop and having fun while he was doing it. Or so he thought. He was having fun, but we're wasting our time in Washington now. It's time to cut our losses and let's get moving in other areas. Okay, Tony, the U.S. is the enemy of the world. The whole world will stand up to them. Well, maybe except for China and Russia, and already Trump is on the phone with Putin, and he's going to get the war resolved.
Yeah.
But have you heard what it's going to involve? And Zelensky hasn't even been involved in this. And it's going to involve Ukraine losing some of the territory that Russia has gained.
Yeah, no problem, Donald. That's exactly. I'm good for that, Donald. Gary, I got a question for you. Back in the 50s and 60s, when we had in the United States, you had the witch hunt for communist sympathizers. A lot of industry leaders actually went down in flames as a result of this, right? Now, okay, move forward 50, 60 years, all right? How is what Chairman Trump is doing now, whatever he's doing with Putin and calling him up, reading him bedtime stories, I don't know what he's doing with him. How is that not treason on the same level, or a communist sympathizer at the same level as the witch hunts or the communist hunts back in the 50s and 60s? It's very similar. Look, at the end of the day, Russia is an oligarchy. United States is a soon-to-be oligarchy if things continue the way they go right now. Okay, Putin was head of the KGB. This is the Soviet Union persona non grata in today's world. How can that not be considered dangerous to the military, the politicians of the United States, to allow the President of the United States to have conversations with what used to be the enemy of the evil empire of the rest of the free world, which it continues to be in terms of its aggressive expansion? So shouldn't he have been thrown in jail by now? I mean, that's what's been going through my head, and I just don't get it. So what's good for the goose is no good for the gander now, right?
He is a convicted felon. But it's a very gray area that you're raising here, because, as president, he's the top diplomat in the country. So he has to keep the channels of communication open. It's if it goes beyond those channels, and who's to say that, it couldn't or wouldn't, then you have an issue. But right now, and Trump is smart enough to, most of the time, to skate that line and manage not to cross it. And even if he does cross it with one foot, he doesn't care. Like,
no, he does
he
not.
just doesn't care about
and there's nobody to and there's
legalities
nobody to
or anything. No, not.
Yeah, and there's
not
nobody
at the
to
moment.
challenge him right now.
Yeah. In Phoenix, I'm in the U.S., and there are so many of us that did not vote for this. We are shocked and embarrassed by Orange and Mussolini. Wow. Yeah, it's... And Gallimere, I think, likes the idea of the maple syrup.
Okay. Done.
Okay, now let's keep going here. David says he has the ability to brainwash people, and he's doing it successfully. That's what is scaring me. He has really convinced a large base as to, as he said during his inauguration, that when the assassin took aim and the bullet scratched his ear, that he knew that God saved him to make America great again.
Of course, yeah. Well, you know what, David, I mean, brainwashing people, I mean, we've talked about this in the past, Gary. I mean, right now, he's got Elon Musk from a social media perspective. He got X under his belt. He's got his own personal social media platform, which is voters and his supporters stick to. And you also got Fox News. Fox News has more viewership across the United States and America than all three combined national networks. So he's got that arena cornered. So he can say whatever the hell he wants, and 50% of the population is just lapping up this nonsense. And absolutely, it's really scary. And David is absolutely right. I know it's scary for you guys in the United States, and I believe you're from the U.S. And us here in Canada. We just can't believe some of the things that's being published by a network such as Fox on a consistent and regular basis. So, I hate watching it. I don't like watching it. I kind of pop in to see what the position is on very critical issues in the United States, in terms of what they're planning to do worldwide. And I got to shut it off. It's just absolute garbage and nonsense. Yet people tune in and just lap all of this stuff up. So really, really scary. He's got that. Trump has got that down to an art. I don't know how, but he's got it down to an art.
So Gallimere says making Canada the 51st state, that's just ridiculous. He also says Canada is its own entity. All right, and now from DeGasser. Funny, real Canadians, those from Manitoba West, like the treatment Trudeau has been getting. He's the most hated politician in Canadian history if you exclude his worthless father. I get where the West is coming from. Yeah. Totally get where the West is coming from. And having lived in British Columbia for 2 years, you do really feel somewhat separated from the rest of the country. And Ottawa is the seat of the federal government. There's just a whole number of things that while I was there, I was just getting used to some things after 2 years. It took me 2 years before I went back east. But I know that Western separation is something that is still very much alive as far as the thought of it is concerned. And it actually, Danielle Smith raised the idea of something happening when we first started talking about putting counter tariffs on goods and services, and perhaps an energy tax on oil exports going south of the border. So it's there. It's been bubbling. It's very similar to the separation sentiment here in Quebec as well. And now having lived out west and living in Quebec and wow, it's hard to believe, but another couple of months we'll be here 4 years. I get both of those sides of things, because it seems when you're dealing with Ottawa, sometimes Ontario is the center of the universe, even more so than Toronto itself is the center of the universe.
And the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, yeah. But yet there's so much, especially for the West, there's so much distance and time zones between. That there's, I get where they're coming from. And the other thing is, Alberta in particular has been shipping money into the equalization funds, so the money has been flowing east for years. And yet every time Alberta raises something about energy, and especially like Trudeau's father, Pierre, remember when he brought out Petro-Canada and nationalized some of the energy industry, which did nothing for the industry whatsoever. And so I get where they're coming from with that, and that doesn't surprise me, Degasser. I totally understand what you're saying, and I get where some of the the roots are that are driving that. So let's see, and thanks for the comment. I really do appreciate it. Gelmer says, well, America's brand has high fructose corn syrup. Okay. I like the real stuff. Okay, and Phoenix comes in with, it's quickly unraveling here, especially with his freezes to funding. Yeah, you people are in for a real roller coaster ride with that one. Real roller coaster ride. And I saw something the other day too, on the weekend, where I think it was Trump said he turned aside requests not to have ICE go into churches and pull people out of churches. And
right.
He turned that request aside. No, they can go into churches and pull them out, whether it's during the service or if they're holed up in the basement of the church, they have free reign to go in. Yeah.
I wonder if the Vatican or the head of the Protestant Church. I mean, you're talking about breach of sanctuary, something that's been in place for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and he's just going to breach that particular sanctity of those religious orders. It's just wow. I was shocked to hear that one.
So we've been busy looking for and Phoenix just said true, and schools as well. Wow. So we've, Canadians have been really putting the push on to find Canadian products. Although there's a survey out today, and there's I think it was 24 or 25% said, we're going to buy Canadian and buy local wherever possible, but we're not willing to give up our Netflix or Apple Plus TV subscriptions. They're drawing the line in the sand. And you know what, as I've said before, and Eddie, I've discussed it with you, like I'm really torn. Where do I go? What do I, how do I replace some of these things, especially in the tech world? And I think, as I mentioned to you the other day or last night, that I've found one cloud service that I'm taking a hard look at, and it's based in Switzerland. So anyway, I'm doing what I can to avoid all of that. But Canadians have really been, turning up the heat and the patriotism that has been coming forth and on social media platforms as well. Also, there's a number of other things that are happening. And, we've got this website now, Buy Canadians for Canadians, spend your money wisely. You can go in and get information on a number of Canadian-made products and products that would replace things that you get from the U.S. And there's a link to this website in the description. And when we post the edited version of the show on our YouTube channel, there will also be a link in the description there as well for you to say, and it's right there as well on the graphic at the moment. So, you can also, if you're playing it back, just freeze it and get the link from there. So that's one thing. And then Eddie, you brought this to my attention, and I'll just let you talk a little bit about it. It's a Facebook group.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, when the threats of the of Trump's tariffs up into Canada came to being, a lot of discussion on Facebook without a group. Just a lot of discussions between Canadian citizens about, what are we going to do? Maybe we should boycott this. How am I supposed to know what product is Canadian, not Canadian? What does made in Canada mean? What does a product of Canada mean? And all this wonderful stuff and a lot of information. And all of a sudden, I came across this. I believe it's run by the same organization. It's a Facebook group called Made in Canada Canadian Products, and we're gonna post it on our media so our people can actually see it. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's a Facebook group called Made in Canada Canadian Products. I am so proud to be a member of this group. I have exchanged pleasantries and messages with so many Canadians across the country, all sharing valuable information on how to buy Canadian, whether it's homegrown, whether it's something that's manufactured in Canada and maybe sold to the United States. Look, we have to call a spade a spade. There are 10 major mega corporations in the United States that pretty much run everything across the world. So invariably, some American organizations are going to be making money out of your purchase, but we can minimize that. For certainty, we want to be able to keep, save our jobs. We want to be able to encourage retail purchases for Canadian products, all kinds of things. And this group, Made in Canada, just to give you an idea at the level of popularity of this over the last 2 weeks or so, it went from 65,000 members to over 906,000 members in a few weeks. Okay. Now, this is what I call the country getting together in a common effort to create a dent to the United States and make people's pockets hurt down there by buying Canadian. And the beautiful thing about this particular group is they also provide information as to what you can use technology-wise to identify what you're buying. There is in the Apple Store, there is an app called OS Canada. This thing's amazing. You basically take your phone, your iPhone out, scan the barcode, and it's going to tell you, has the product been made in Canada? Is it a product of Canada? How much Canadian content is there? And if it's a non-Canadian product, is in fact an American product, it'll give you alternative brands to purchase that are Canadian instead of that American product. And if you scan and it doesn't show up, you can manually enter the brand and the product, and it will tell you the same information. So that one's a real nice one. It's called OS Canada, and the other one is called Shop Canadian. I think that one's an Android-based solution. But either way, it's just getting Canadians together, and to go from 65,000 to 906,000 is incredible. I know this thing has been on global. I know that a lot of major newspapers have picked up on this, and they're promoting it as well. And just to give you an idea, you're looking at a population of 39, 40 million in Canada, if my memory serves. So we're talking about 2.75% of the Canadian adult population are now members of this group, and it continues to climb. So I encourage everyone to have a look. I encourage everyone to join this group and actually join the efforts in supporting each other to promote and buy Canadian. So I really feel very patriotic. I feel very motivated to do what I can do to serve notice to Chairman Trump and to serve notice to American businesses that we as Canadians, we can actually survive on our own quite well. Thank you. And this is one of our initiatives, and I encourage everyone to join this.
That's right, because the more business we create in Canada, that means there will be expansion and more jobs, Canadian jobs created, and the money stays here. Might be a little bit more expensive than maybe what you can get elsewhere, but you can sit back and take comfort in the fact that, first of all, we don't have to have anything to do with Trump, and secondly, we are putting fellow Canadians, giving them an opportunity at a job. So, and jobs, with the benefits packages that we have in Canada versus a lot of other countries. So it's a win-win situation. And I put up I did a quick search in the App Store today and in the Google Play Store. And that Shop Canadian app is Apple, iOS, and it's also Android. And then there are two others that I found in the Google Store and two others that I found in the App Store. And I'll say one thing. I looked at each one of these apps in the App Store, the Apple one, and all of them have been updated within the last 1 to 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So I found that really interesting to see that all three have been updated in that recently. So, and we have one more comment to catch up on here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's bring that up. And it's from Monel. Oh, in response to DeGasser, I get that you are pissed off, but now is the time for Canadians to stand together. You can get pissed off again at a later date. And you know what? This is the time right now for us to put aside all of our regional differences and all of our political differences. We're all playing on one team right now. That's Team Canada. And that that's a good way to end the show, actually, Monel. Thank you for that. Because
I know her well. She's very smart.
Canada.
Very smart lady.
There you go. So, Eddie, we had one other segment lined up, and it was to deal with the steel and aluminum tariffs, which kind of got outdated this afternoon when he signed the executive order for tariffs for everyone. So we can have a look at the impact of that whole maneuver maybe next week. We'll see what shakes out of it. Other than that, it's been it has been a really busy week of chaos and politicking. Yeah, and what happens next week, I guess, is anyone's guess. Want to thank everyone tonight for your comments. Really great show. It was just really invigorating to be able to interact and have those that feedback coming in and sharing it. I really appreciate it. And if you're watching the edited version on our YouTube channel at some point, and it'll be up posted on the channel later tonight or by very early morning, and you're watching it at a later date, leave a comment below, because I'm monitoring those comments to see if people are commenting and responding to them as I would if, or as we would if we were getting them here while we're doing the live stream. So please, please, please leave a comment if you do watch at a later date. And also remember to like and or share and or subscribe. We've picked up a few more subscribers this week, so we're getting there. We're growing, slow but sure. It's organic, and I kind of like it that way. Just a nice steady pace. So please, if you enjoy, do that. Like, subscribe, and share. And remember to come back here next week, because we will be back in 6 days in our regular Wednesday night slot at 7 o'clock Eastern. And so from Montreal, I'm going to say good night. And Eddie?
And from Playa del Carmen, I'm going to say good night, everyone.